Murray's an area that gets overlooked a lot of the time. It's seen as a bit of a highway between cities like Aberdeen and Inverness. There's a lot of things that go on here that are good, like farming, tourist attractions, whiskey, scenery, stuff like that. But as a person with a neurodiverse condition, I feel like the local area has absolutely no strategy on this issue. I'm in a place where I cope with my condition pretty well now, but growing up, when you feel like there's no strategy, you feel pretty abandoned and alone. I didn't know if I was the only person that felt like this, so I decided to go ask around. Ever since you've been diagnosed, have you been offered any kind of support services or anything from an adult perspective?
Not really, no. It's kind of more on the side of with the boys, and then got some friends in different places, but not like any professional help.
Jordan was diagnosed when he was 19 years old, so already classed as an adult in general society. When we finally got that diagnosis, we were kind of, yeah, there's your diagnosis. He is on the spectrum. You know, there is support for you out there. That's what we were told, but we had to go and find the support ourselves.
There's nothing offered.
And there was nothing offered. There was no counselling offered for Jordan having that diagnosis, because it was a massive thing, even though us as parents and family members knew that he would have been. There was nothing offered. So we were left to go and do our own research, find our own support. And shockingly, there is absolutely nothing in Moray. And if there is, they're not very well signposted or advertised.
I feel specifically to my child that there are no specialist services in Moray. At all, there are services, but generic ones, so ones that Scot doesn't really fit into for his needs. The services that we have tried have been quite poor, unreliable really. And they were non-existent from when my son was diagnosed at sort of 6 years old. We've tried a few different services that have been offered to us, but we would always get phone calls maybe half an hour into a session. For example, there was a play scheme over the summer. Scot really required one-to-one, and his behaviours became more and more challenging, which we would get a phone call about half an hour into it, just come and get him. So we were getting no respite at all. So yeah, there's not an awful lot, certainly for my son's needs.
So to be perfectly honest, the last few months and weeks have been a living nightmare for us. Jordan couldn't cope with his emotions, what was going on. He didn't understand the situation, you know. So we were just kind of, you know, the police and ambulance was always involved. But again, they would just discharge Jordan, go home, and he couldn't understand why he couldn't get the help when he's screaming for it.
Can you just say what a broker bridge meeting is? Have I just said that
so
correctly?
Yeah, every month throughout the country, I'm sure not my local authority is not the only one to do it. There's a thing called a brokerage meeting where all the care companies get together. There's hundreds and hundreds of people, between elderly people, people with disabilities, people with additional health needs, people with additional support needs, people with mental illness. On this list, who need care. And that's where you come at a little bit of a problem, because caring is such a broad term. You can look after people with mental illness, elderly, disabilities. Anyway, there's hundreds of people on this list every month, and these care companies basically have to decide who gets priority with care. Normally, you're looking at people who are at most risk of their health. When does someone with autism come into that? It doesn't. You've got probably people who are elderly, who are at risk of falling over, who are at risk of being in hospital, who are going to take priority in that list. I've seen it myself. It does happen. That's part of the issue. You've got a lot of these companies who possibly can't provide these care to these people on these lists with autism because there's not local facilities, local support groups, local networks available for these people. I also have found that like your support networks within my local community essentially are very close-knit. They're very cliquey. It's hard to break into these support networks, especially ones run by local authorities, ones that are in buildings that are designed for people with disabilities, but good luck trying to get into these people's buildings, good luck trying to, as an outside organisation, you're not very welcomed. You're seen as a hindrance rather than someone who's there to enjoy the same facilities as that people who are already there.
I'm very scared of the ones that are not getting supported. I mean, I'm just about managing to work out support in other ways. I'm always sourcing out lots of different support. So I've got a wonderful church family. I go to church on Sundays. So they've been really, really supportive and wonderful. So that's a good support. But I mean, all the other autistic people in Moray, it's a huge area, and it's really upsetting that we don't have the services that we need.
So with Gillian and Karen, they've been successful with finding support, but not within the local area.
So I kind of started after Marcus had his diagnosis. I was starting a search for different people where I could find a diagnosis, but there wasn't anybody, not in the NHS or anything that I could find. And then by the last moment, I managed to find John Forrester, who diagnosed privately in Aberdeen. But luckily I got the funding because it cost about 400, I think. It's been quite a while. But then luckily I got supported by the RAF Benevolent Fund because I used to serve, my husband still serves in the forces, so we were supported by them.
Karen, one of the parents we spoke to, son goes to a residential school in Aberdeenshire for people with autism, which is great, but what is that, a 180-mile round journey?
It's sad that he has to travel 65 miles away to receive the education that Moray can't provide him with. We're grateful that he copes with the journey and staying away from home. But as a parent, it is difficult.
So when we were interviewing Lee as part of this, he mentioned a service called Loch Park, which we'd never heard of. So we actually got in contact with the owner and we set up a day to go and interview some of the service users, some of the workers, and actually get to see the work that they do. So the journey to Loch Park was quite long. It's in a very remote area of Moray. It's out past Keith, pretty much, not exaggerating here, almost in the mountains.
Initially, this was started in 1995 by a couple of ex-psychiatric nurses out of Loch, and they had put in 5 years of their life into Loch Park. and in the hope that they would be able to, and they sold it on. And that's how my company got involved in the transition, purchasing Loch Park from the ex-psychiatric nurses from Ladysbridge that initially leased the land and got young men and women from former patients. And they were, unfortunately, I think they were still treated as patients when I arrived. So I take it from a patient point of view and a human being point of view, and there was nothing sick with them. They weren't patients, they were people. And that's how I started looking after and Loch Park.
Do you think people can be viewed as statistics sometimes rather than humans?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Loch Park here is just a great place. I mean, when I first came, I could hardly believe that some of the guys, some of the work that they were doing, especially with the saws and the axes and the gardening work as well, some of their stuff was really great.
So you're supporting them with trying to explore their own abilities, basically, and also they need like help with personal care because maybe they're a little bit. It's not that they're slower than anyone else, but they just need that extra little support to reach a goal, maybe.
I think the best thing about Loch Park is I like doing log splitting, and as well as hand kindling sometimes, and use the kindling machine, and also go on delivery runs to do bags of firewood logs and kindler bags. Yeah.
James was mentioning there's like charity work that goes on.
Yeah,
We're just next to the stage. There's
Yeah.
like sometimes a music festival and the money
right.
gets raised for local charities and that.
For folk's sake, the festival is called, yeah. We up to any special need people. If they lack of confidence, just come here. We'll make them welcome, and eventually they might come out the shell and be usual happy self here.
Autism is all about trust. I've got to gain the trust in the person with autism, and I've got to gain the trust in the parents that are living with that child, so that they can trust us to look after. Once you gain that trust, then you can start on a work program. Now, when a parent phones up and says, person's come home, they're tired, they're exhausted. To me, that's giving the parent a sense of achievement, that their son or daughter can come here and flourish and actually be part of this community. One head in the department, who's now retired, always said about Loch Park, it was Shangri-La. Once you went there, nobody left. And that's not really basically true, because we have got people that have left. You know, when they've been through the transition period, they've spent 3 years at Loch Park and now are working in allocations or wood recycling, or at Baxter's, or at one person was working in Glenfinnan.
What is Loch Park's goals when it comes to supporting someone with autism? I know everyone's going to be different in that, but is there certain goals that you want to meet to help these people achieve what they want out of life and help them achieve goals that they have?
Yeah, fundamentally, I'm looking at a situation where a child with autism can be a very difficult process for any parent or teacher. And then looking at the transition from being in the school system to coming to Loch Park. Funding only takes will give me 6 weeks for that transition. And that is 1 day. So 6 periods ain't enough for anyone with autism. No stretch of the imagination. So when I'm doing a transition period, it's from anything from 6 months to a year.
This is the only day centre for probably miles to do with adults with learning disabilities. And like it's something that doesn't get enough money thrown at it, basically.
We're all pushed in this world by money, and care systems no different. It's one of the few industries that's been massively reaped the money in the last 10 years. I'm not going to blame any government in particular, but the government just now isn't helping. But that also filters right down to a local level and down to people you support. But I think, no, it's not. I think the people working on the front line are still doing massively.
In terms of the local strategy towards neurodiversity, do you think it's something that needs to be reviewed? And if so, do you think having input from people that are on the spectrum, their parents, their carers, etc., to have input on how funding's allocated and how support's delivered, would that be a good thing going forward?
Yeah, massively. Just now, the care sector is run by a governing body. It's called the SSC. That's in Scotland. That's one of the reasons I left care was the SSC. So the SSC are the governing body. They are rules and regulators, which in care you need something like this. It's massive. You have to pay £50 a year out your low wage in care to be part of the SSC. If you're not a SSC member, you have no right to practice care in Scotland. The SSC also hold the right to do it's called a CPD record. So a CPD record is a thing called a continuous professional development record. This is something every day you're meant to fill in at your work on top of 9 other jobs you've got to do that day. If the SSC decide in the time that they want to see your continual professional development record and it's not up to date, you lose your job. So you've got people like this running it. It's a witch hunt. First 4 years, I worked in care. There wasn't any of this. My 4th year in care, suddenly I'm having to do police checks. There wasn't anything on my record, thankfully. There wasn't anything on my record, but that was a care industry as a whole. They massively stripped down people who'd maybe been in trouble 20, 30 years ago, changed around their life. Good carers, good people, now out of jobs because it's people in these jobs that are making these decisions who are not actually realising the effects it has on a ground level, people who are working day to day in this industry.
So with Loch Park, it's clear that there is a service in the local area, but it's in such a remote area, not that many people know about it. It probably doesn't get the funding that it deserves. How do we make more services like Loch Park available to the entire area to stop people feeling so lost?
Well, I can tell you what's happening nationally at the moment. So there is going to be an implementation of a commissioner for neurodiverse people. And, well, neurodiverse, autism and learning disabled people. And I think that's going to be a huge step forward. But that would just be the beginning for me. I am going to be asking questions as to what is this going to look like, and how do we stop Scotland and areas of Scotland being a postcode lottery for people? I used to be a councillor, so I know how important it is that local authorities do have powers over their own local areas because there are bespoke issues to those areas. But at the same time, there needs to be a lot of collaboration nationally in how people are being helped, supported or not. Because I think they're coming from their intentions are coming from a good place, saying it shouldn't matter what you're diagnosed as, but they need to listen to neurodiverse people who want that diagnosis and understand why they want it. You can't medicate autism, but you can look at somebody who's autistic, who has eating disorders, who has anxiety, who has chronic pain, and link it all together in a holistic way and help that person's mental health to come to terms with the fact that I process and work differently, in my brain than other people do. Ask, does the local authority have an autism strategy in place, and are they adhering to that? But again, these are things that I would say to the person to get in touch with their local councillor or their MSP, and they would certainly take that on and take those questions forward for them, because that's what we're here for as elected representatives. We get paid for by our constituents, the people that voted us in, to help and be that advocate and take that burden away from people.
I would love to see a hub where anybody on the spectrum, whether they've got a support network in place like social workers or CPNs or anything like that in place, but anybody could go along to a hub to find out information, be pointed in the right direction for any support that they were needing at that time, a bit like the one-stop shop in Inverness or the Harlow Centre in Aberdeen, where I've contacted both places, but because we're not in their county, we're not in their catchment area.
Really pretty much from diagnosis right through up to adulthood. I mean, I'm hoping that now Scot has got a lot of support, that he's going to be supported right through his adult years as well. But everything is just a constant fight. And Moray Council and education, they just can't wait until families are at crisis point. And that's what they seem to be doing before they're offered any sort of service. And it's not good enough.
I feel like it's possibly not. I think it's through a lack of understanding. The people who make these decisions don't see things at a ground level. It's the same with a lot of industries. It's not just the care industry. It happens everywhere, but more so at this level. Somebody signing a checkbook somewhere down in London isn't going to care that little John isn't going to be able to get his wheelchair next week. Until it's put in the hands of local people and money is diversified that way, nothing is going to change. People get paid lots of money to sign checks and make decisions, and that'll be the way it runs.
Please just listen to each of these individuals and families that need your help. We need to move on and just support every family, because it's really hard and challenging, and it's just a fight all the time to get the support and services that your family needs, and it shouldn't be like that.
900 people in Moray with disabilities, growing every month. There's people getting diagnosed all the time and all that. There's no solution to that problem. It's only going to get worse. People are being let down, and it's not through people who are working with these people, lack of trying. It's through lack of understanding, and it's going to come to a boiling point.